Howdy out there. I'm gonna do a video tonight, a story. My regular upload schedule that I was originally trying to do. Some unforeseen circumstances came up today, so unfortunately I won't be able to upload that video today, but I will definitely have it ready for next Wednesday, and we'll get back on track for the what makes this band awesome series. But in its place tonight, like I said, I'm going to do just a quick story. I've been doing a couple of these here and there sporadically, but tonight it's going to be I would say a relatively short one. But anyway, this story goes back to the year 1990, which of course is a long time ago now. But at that time, I had just enlisted in the United States Army, and this story is going to be about a guy I met in basic training. He and I became pretty good friends, and the story is going to be about he and I taking a trip to our first, well, it wasn't our duty station, it was our first training location before we go to a duty station. But anyway, he and I were assigned to this training. It's called Advanced Individual Training, or AIT, in the Army. The other branches called them something different, like the Navy calls them A schools. The Air Force calls them tech schools. I think the Marines call it AIT too. I'm not 100% positive on them, but anyway, it doesn't matter. After we got out of basic training from Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, this guy that I was speaking about earlier, he and I got orders to go to a place that no longer exists, but at the time there was a Air Force base in Denver, Colorado, called Lowry Air Force Base. Well, he and I were assigned to it, and because it was on an Air Force base and we were Army personnel, we were authorized to take what's called POVs, or your personally owned vehicle. And when I got out of basic training, I had a car before I joined the Army, and it was the first car I ever bought, but that was, a used car. I bought another car when I got out of basic, and that was my first brand new car. I mean, like, sparkling right off the show lot, and it had like maybe 5 miles on it or something like that. But this guy, his name was Michael Sloan. He was from Mesa, Arizona. He and I got into my brand new 1990 Mitsubishi Eclipse, which was black on the outside and I think gray on the inside. But at the time, those were pretty cool looking cars. And it had relatively decent power. I mean, it wasn't like a true sports car, but it was sporty, I would say. But he and I had to drive from the little town I was living at, at the time. But my parents had the car in the parking lot ready for me to go to Colorado. So he and I got in the car and left to go to Colorado. We drove through Texas, like through Dallas and I-20 all the way out to West Texas, and from there started heading north up through Lubbock and Amarillo, and then through we got off that and headed like northwest from the Amarillo area through, like, there's a little town called Dalhart, Texas, which is right there before you go into the northeast corner of New Mexico. And you go through another town called Raton or Raton. I don't know how you pronounce it, but it's that stretch of road is pretty desolate. So it's like, I think, the only sizable city from Amarillo to before you get into Colorado. But anyway, right around somewhere in New Mexico, I had been driving pretty much all the way up to that point. Right before we got to Colorado, the state line, probably, I don't know, 20 or 30 minutes before we got there, I was a little tired and I just wanted to catch a little nap. So I told Mike, hey, you know, you can drive for a while. I don't mind. And he was like, okay, cool. So I think the next place we stopped and got gas, it was like right inside Colorado. We switched over. He got in the driver's seat and I got in the passenger seat. And I don't normally fall asleep in a car, but I actually did fall asleep. And while he was driving, I might have been out for 5 minutes, literally. And I felt the car coming to a stop. So I woke up and I looked over at Mike and I was like, hey, what's going on? He goes, we're getting pulled over. Like, what? What are you talking about? Yeah, he goes, there's a cop behind us. So I turned around and I looked, and sure enough, I saw a state trooper with his lights on behind us. And we were stopped or pulled over on the side of the road. And I was like, what the hell, Mike? I mean, he's like, well, I was going a little too fast. I said, well, how much is a little too fast? The cop comes up to the window and very aggressively, telling him to get out of the car and all that kind of stuff. Come to find out, this friend of mine, while I was asleep, was driving 120 freaking miles an hour, and the only reason why he didn't get arrested was because we told the cop, he can tell because we still have buzz cuts, and things like that. We just looked like military. Mike convinced this guy, hey, we're in the military, we only have a few hours before we have to report in to our next duty station. He was really laying on thick, and the cop didn't arrest him, but he did. Obviously, he got a ticket, and it was a very sizable ticket. But also, come to find out, he didn't have any insurance, so that was an interesting day because once the cop let him go with his, I think it was like for 1990, a $500 ticket was like, that was pretty steep. And I'm pretty sure that's what he got. It might have been even a little bit more. I think it was like 550 or 575, something like that. It was just shy of $600 ticket because for each 10 miles an hour you go over the speed limit, it's like like another $100 or whatever. I was surprised how lenient that state trooper was, though. But anyway, Mike got that, and I was like, I was not happy with Mr. Mike Sloan for the rest of that trip. But anyway, that's my story for tonight. I'm sorry I couldn't come up with really anything better, but I was thinking about, hey, what can I do for a video tonight? And I kind of remembered, that kind of jumped off the top of my head for some reason. But I was like, well, that's something I can put together in a few minutes. But that's it for tonight. I hope you enjoyed it, and peace out.